before us. Thank you, Megan or Sarah.
hmm Yep. So I'm gonna get us started today. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand, put something in the comments. Brett's going to be monitor, or CJ or Brett are going to be monitoring the chat and kind of let me know because I'm going to end up being in full screen mode here shortly. Dan, did you have anything else you wanted to share before we get started?
Just that I'm really glad that everybody's here, and many of you may have heard that we are assigning advisors to be liaison between the different departments, and um, uh, I think all the advisors are in the session still. A couple of us have to pop out because of other meetings, but Brett, Sarah, CJ, and Megan are really here to serve you, and Sarah's going to talk about that. And as always, you have it up on your screen right now, so that's what I was.
Oh, no, sorry. I was talking, it looked like it was trying to create breakout rooms, and I was like, no, I don't
Oh,
want that. I don't want breakout rooms.
but we're really glad and here. We're always here to help you, no matter what. So, um, here, meeting virtually or whatever. So just please reach out to us. We're glad to connect with you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm so delighted everyone's here today on this chilly, windy, snowy Friday. So to get us started, I do have a handout prepared that I'm going to kind of walk us through today. You can access this at any point in time. It's going to be available to you. So if you're on the CAM page, on the current student section, there is a tab for academic advisors. And here under faculty resources, one, there's a whole host of helpful content there. But also at the very bottom is the handout. So if you'd like to have that pulled up and maybe follow along, write your own notes, that kind of stuff. Also, if you were unable to attend Megan's session last Friday, she has a handout as well. So we're going to get started today. I'm going to be covering kind of the ins and outs of declaration processes, amendments, things like that. We have some test students that are real students, but they've just been anonymized. So know that there is no CAM student out there, but this is a current student, and everything we do here is just a test, so it's not going to kind of permanently affect that student.
27 in a row.
Yeah, well, and so again, this is the test site, so it's the data is not quite up to date. So it has pulled kind of their old registration and their current registration. Yeah, they're just a super ambitious student. They got a lot going on there. Okay, so to declare a major or minor or program or something like that, you're going to access these tabs on the side here. And so you're going to come to the Declare Major Minor Certificate. This is going to be a really useful screen. There's a lot you're going to end up being able to do from this screen in particular. But let's get that major declared. So this is also a screen you're going to run into a ton. So let's say that we are going to declare this student on kind of an art major or something like that. And of course it doesn't want to work. Let's see. Nope. All right. Of course it doesn't want to work today, right? Let's see. Sometimes it gets rascally. Nope. All right. So I can show this to you. Oh, no, because that's not anonymized. Well, this is interesting. Let me come over here. I have a student who's already declared, so I can kind of show you what that might look like from this screen. Of course, everyone, this is the one thing that I didn't test today, was that portion. Looked over everything else. All right, so when you would hit that plus sign, you'd normally have a list of options. Now, you can only declare things within your own particular department, or if you're working with interdisciplinary programs like multimedia or public affairs, you would have the opportunity to declare those as well. So when you hit that plus sign, a list would come up You'd pick the one that you'd want, and then you'd come over to this screen. You're going to want to see all the different degrees that are available on that major, and you would just pick the one that you want to do. If you're not sure what degree to put in there, definitely check the notes and degree progress. We've probably noted that for the student of what one they might want to look for, or you might be offering a major that it only has one degree. So in this case, this student only has this choice. But you would add that program, maybe it's a major and a minor, that's cool, and you're going to come over here to commit. And so once you commit, you're going to want to check and make sure you get this kind of workflow notification. And I always like to come back to that main page and make sure everything went in appropriately. So that is how you would declare. Let me try one more time and see. I might call on Brett if he knows another way to do this when it's not showing up.
I think it's a test thing because usually they'd all be listed there.
They would. Okay. Okay. And because we're recording today, we don't want to pull up an actual student with their identification on there. So if you were to review the handout, it does again have step-by-step guides and shows you the exact pictures and things like that that you would want to use. Any questions so far? All right, then we're going to keep moving.
Sarah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just one quick one. Maybe we're going to get to this anyway, but where it always, before committing, it always asks you to which bulletin you want to go by for that particular major versus the governing bulletin. Is there, what are the reasons you might want to go away from the one that is listed as the default?
That's a really great question. And the reasons you might want to go for away from the default might be there's been curricular changes. So that student would be on maybe a quote unquote more flexible program. Maybe you've added some new elective options. MMD is a great example of that. Kind of over the years, they've added some elective choices, or the coding has gotten a little easier. A good example of that is communication minors had, it used to be set up where it had to be in consultation with your advisor. Well, no electives would show up there. They had to be entered in, versus in later years, they kind of coded it so the system would do that automatically. So sometimes it's ends up being almost 6 to 1, half dozen the other. Could you go in and amend that year? Absolutely. If you wanted to just kind of make that a little bit easier, a little bit open, that might be a reason to shift the bulletin year. One really important thing to note about that, though, is students don't have to move their bulletin year forward, governing, major, minor, or otherwise. They are able to stay on their year if they want to stay on their year. So that's a really important thing to note, that if you do change the curriculum, you can't necessarily force them all to move forward. So you would need to kind of have that conversation, and 9 times out of 10, they do opt to move forward because it's usually changing for the better, and they would want access to that.
Okay, as Brett well knows, we had to deal with that to get them into the Bachelor of Applied Arts from advertising. So that's why I was asking that question.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll talk a little bit more about governing bulletins a little later. That's actually kind of the next spot that I'm going to. Okay. So if we were to look, and I'm pulling up, choose my student here. So this is a really great example of how you might end up doing that. So let's kind of talk through. And so for some folks not in the journalism area, they added the BAA option. And so to be eligible to get the new degree, so that to be able to do that degree, a student has to change their governing bulletin, because a governing bulletin is going to dictate the student's general education requirements, their degree options, and then major minor choices. So if they wanted a student to be able to take that new degree choice, they had to move the whole kit and caboodle forward. Sometimes, and what we're kind of experiencing now that the kind of dust has settled and some more students are in the pipeline, that governing bulletin is staying pretty consistent, but they might be changing their major or minor bulletin. But if you do run into that, if you wanted to change their year, this is where you would do it. So again, just a refresher, I'm under the declare section. If you wanted to change the degree, maybe again, they were on a Bachelor of Science and you want to change it to a Bachelor of Arts, this is how you would do it. And it would take you back to that page where you could see like pick your choices and add and remove. It would take you back to that page. Changing the bulletin, that's where you would do that from here. And this is where you can come in. You do have the option of changing a governing bulletin. I would just be really thoughtful when you're talking to that student about what that means. A lot changed in 1920, like where we went to 120 credits and things like that. If you're ever in doubt about changing the governing bulletin, feel free to reach out to their advisor, or again, we have probably discussed that with them prior to sending them your way and have placed that in the notes section. But this is where you could be changing different bulletin years if you wanted to do that. Any questions about that? If you do end up updating their governing bulletin, I would highly, strongly recommend, ask that you place a note in the system that says you discussed it with them and you changed it with their permission. That's something that you'll notice in the notes from all of us. Like whenever we're shifting or moving, we are always documenting that we did so with the student's permission. That's just a way to cover us in case there's issues later. So that is a very valuable thing to put in there. The major minor year is not as critical to note that, but again, kind of including information is always better than not including information. Any questions on that? So if we wanted to remove a major or minor, we would come over here. Process is very similar to adding. So you can, again, do a lot from this screen. Let's say I wanted to take this one off. Okay, I'm removing that. I would commit that. And then that would end up removing their major. Now, one thing to note is as faculty advisors, you can only add something that's within your department or your purview, but you can remove anything. So maybe the student is switching from a marketing to an advertising minor, and they would like you to take that old one off. You can absolutely do that. Again, another great thing to put in the notes, like removed minor at student's request or something like that. Sometimes when they're changing majors, you always want to make sure you're removing the old one and then adding the new one, because again, especially if degree options are different. And so going from something like a declared marketing major to an advertising major, just totally different options there. So always making sure you're kind of cleaning up, especially if they're changing or switching to you. And again, this is a great option to come back and refresh and be looking at that kind of home page of, okay, did everything land how I wanted it to land? Like, is everything looking accurate? Any questions about that?
No, but that's helpful. I just told a kid this week I couldn't remove his major in another college just because I didn't think I could.
Yeah, you definitely can. You can remove anything. I will say when you're shifting bulletin years, degrees, there's no kind of one-stop ability for that. You usually kind of have to remove the old one and then start the process to add the new one. If it's on the same degree, then you 100% can do that all from this screen, or kind of in your same kind of list of options. But sometimes you do have to kind of make that change and then go and do a secondary step. And that happened a ton, Mike, with the already here students that were switching to that BAA. You know, we had to change their governing bulletin first. And so sometimes it is a multi-step process to get what it is that you want or need done.
Yeah, Sarah, about the removal. So if I think minor is relatively better than if we remove somebody's major from another department, would it be like advisable or best practice just to refer the student to that department? Because I'm thinking, would the other department that's being removed, would they have an issue or like contention about that it's not in our area? We just went ahead and removed them.
I would say this is where the notes are very helpful, because if the student is telling you, I no longer want to pursue this major, I would now like to be journalism, then I would just take care of it all in one jiffy, because sending them back, it's truly just an administrative thing. We are still working on kind of departmental notifications when a student leaves a program. But if they are switching, I would really just take care of it, because they are indicating to you, I no longer want to pursue that other program. And
yeah, I guess I see it a little bit differently. Then it's more than just an administrative thing, because sometimes a student could be having an issue with one class or one professor. Then they just fed up, they were upset, and they say, I don't want it anymore. But
right.
For example, they really wanted to do journalism, but something happened, or, you know, either back home or with some class or with some professor, they were just mad because they are young people. So probably the department or faculty, especially if they know the student, they want another chance to talk it over, maybe with the student, like think it through. Because a lot of students, for example, they are saying they want to do journalism since high school. And this and that, and their whole experience is centered on this. If it's just in other words, I'm thinking about other departments, other faculty, like and what the student really want. Like, should there be another chance just to talk it through? Not that we want to persuade and keep them, but just because the way I feel is the faculty in the department know their program, know their students well. So it might be helpful that way.
Sure. I think this is a situation where to trust your own judgment, you know, and as you're asking those questions, it's, you know, absolutely appropriate to ask some prompting questions of, well, what draws you to this major? What are you hoping to do with it? What were you doing previously? And so if you're getting kind of some red flags in that conversation of, oh, I just didn't like this one class or whatever, that might prompt you to say, well, let's kind of push pause on this. And how do you feel about having a conversation, you know, with your other faculty advisor? I would say in my world, the students that I'm chatting with a little bit more, they've already kind of thought it through. They've maybe tried a class in your area, and they realize that other path just really isn't for them. It's not what they thought it was going to be. And no harm, no foul, like no issue with someone that kind of drove them to that point. But they just aren't kind of on board with that anymore. But that's a conversation we have with them. We talk them through that. And sometimes they've had just a class and it's like, well, that may or may not help you decide. So I would trust your instincts there. And if you're thinking there's more to the story, then go for it. You know, kind of, you can pursue that how you want. But if that student's really just clearly like, yeah, it just wasn't for me. And I think a lot of students, for example, from business, kind of get in and are realizing it's not what they thought. And they realize they actually do want advertising, for example, or PR, and that's a better fit. So I would leave it up to you, and how you best want to approach that. But absolutely asking that student some questions to try and get a sense of things is incredibly valuable.
Yeah, I agree. Especially with the econ major, I get a lot students saying basically they were pushed into business by their parents because they thought it's better to find a job, but then they didn't find like they want to do that.
Right. Yeah, they didn't actually want that, you know, and so I think that's And a lot of times it's providing them options that they're trying to understand what can they do with this beyond maybe their kind of immediate understanding. And so again, we're going to kind of send them your way. We're going to do some preliminary stuff often if they do connect with us first, but yeah, have that conversation and see how it goes. I mean, the nice thing with being able to do it online is if they do have that conversation or they do think about it and decide, yes, I still want to do this, you can change it. They can also 100% change it back. So if they have made that decision and then JK, they can always change it back. Everything here is changeable, editable, and fixable. And I think that removes a lot of pressure for students around the declaration process. Because I've been noticing they're very reticent to do that, to kind of confirm, even though they've been on that path for 2 semesters, 3 semesters, and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Any other questions about that?
Sarah, not necessarily a question, but just one thing I would add when we're talking about switch majors or adding majors. As we all know, sometimes a student wants to be a double major. And in that scenario, we just need to make sure that we're careful about what degrees those majors are offered on. It's typically not, a huge deal, but I do have some students that I'm currently working with that are wanting to do 2 different majors that are on 2 different degrees. So we have to navigate that or make sure that's a part of the conversation with the student if they do indicate they want to be a double major.
That's an excellent point, CJ. Thank you for sharing that. And there are always little quirks behind the scenes of what can be kind of looped up under a degree and what can't. And so again, if you're ever in doubt, on the degree progress page under advisors, you can see who that student's CAM advisor is. Feel free to reach out to us and we can kind of look at it, talk it through. But there's absolutely times we're still calling up registrars being like, can we do this? What's going on? But yeah, that's an excellent point, CJ. Thank you.
Yeah, not sure if we are talking about the same student. I got one student, she came in and said, I want both degree program for 2 majors. I immediately sent her to Sarah and asked a lot of questions. She said,
yeah.
I didn't know we were she thought there was policy against that. I said, it's not the policy. It's how long you want to stay at university.
Yeah. And there's always financial aid implications and you need so many credits if you're doing a double degree so it's not always as clear on the surface. So those are great moments to again kind of push pause and reach out if you've got questions. And then we kind of view our role as helping provide students with information to make decisions. So we'll give them all the information we can and then go from there.
So can we take it as a rule, generally speaking, if any student requests 2 degrees, we would basically just say, no, that's not possible? Or unless you want to stay 6 or 5 years?
I would see that really gets in the weeds. There's some programs where 2 degrees could be feasible.
Oh, okay.
Feasible. I have some students who are doing that. And because sometimes if one of those is a BAA, they can double count or do a minor in a program they had done a major in. I think the rule of thumb should be if they're pursuing 2 different degrees, we should probably talk them through that first. Let's really make sure we're clear on what the implications are and what their options are of maybe doing it all under 1 degree.
Okay. Because I thought if we could have some simple rules, that make it a lot easier.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, the student can always do whatever they want as long as they understand what the implication for that decision is. So yeah. But I'm going to huge on, and again, always a good option before we move off that page to send them our way as well. And we will always put notes in. So I have a student, she 100% could do it all on 1 degree. She has absolutely decided that's not what she's going to do. Okay. So we've put that in the notes. I've talked her through it. And then you kind of know, all right, at least someone's talked to her about it. But yeah, have them come back to us and we can always help or work in tandem with you. Like Jaffe mentioned, emailed back and forth on, some students. So, but it's not necessarily, we can't rule it out. That's always their choice.
Okay.
Let's talk about amendments. I know that's a super common question that I get. and the different types of amendments that are available. And so I wanted to dig in with that. Probably the most common amendment that we run into is a course swap. And at that point in time, you're saying, okay, I have this requirement. Maybe it's Art 106, a drawing course. And that student maybe took a class somewhere else. It came in as departmental cred. And I think that class is going to work. I think that will work. I don't think they need to do that Art 106 requirement. So I'm going to swap that other class for Art 106. So that's often a reason you might do that option. Or again, the curriculum has changed. A good example is journalism 350 versus 353. The flexibility of saying like, okay, that student was in the pipeline and already took 350. I'm going to swap that for them so that that requirement is covered. So that's probably the most frequently seen one. The other options are you're adding a required or elective option. So this might be something you do. And again, I feel like I'm picking on advertising a lot. I'm not, but we have been given permission to add new courses like Journalism 339, Journalism 375, as elective options on that minor. So we're not really swapping it with a different course. It's just a new option for you that's there. And so adding that to the list of options makes often the most sense for that student and that student situation. That's also a good option if, let's say, again, at their previous institution, they took a class that maybe came in as departmental credit and we don't really have that course, but you're like, it's in the ballpark enough that I'm going to say, yeah, that's going to work. I'm going to take that class. But again, I'm not trying to swap the requirement. It's not close enough. I'm just going to add it to that list of choices. Another thing is maybe that student transferred in an equivalent, but it wasn't the same number of credits. So this happens a lot in broadcasting. Their BCA 210 is 4 credits, but at other places it's 3. So we need to try and offset that missing credit, and we might add another required course in there so that student is still getting the required number of credits. So those are reasons you might be adding a required or elective option to their record. One of the last reasons is to offset the BAA overage. So on the Bachelor of Applied Arts degree, there is a rule that you are not allowed to exceed 8 or 9, it depends on the bulletin year, 8 or 9 credits from that home department beyond what's required in a major or minor. So if you have, for example, a transfer student that's just coming in with oodles of departmental cred, and they are a BAA major, and we can't necessarily apply that anywhere, we might then say, okay, I'm going to add these courses as required so that you're not penalized. Because for every credit you go over, that 8 or 9 adds an additional credit they need to get to graduation. Any questions about those before we kind of dive into like literally how to do that? Okay, so I'm going to start doing the amendments. Now, again, under the Declare and Amend tab, you have your course amendments. That's kind of how I got here. So I want to come in and amend these courses. And some of these you're going to see probably little lock symbols next to. So we have different permissions in our area to modify certain things. You would really be only able to touch your programs, but we can come in here. This student is a great example of what I mentioned of a significant amount of departmental credit. Mary Beth Minnis has already gone in and made a considerable number of swaps. And so you'll see those here, these symbols, kind of the arrows in opposite directions mean those are a swap. If you hover your mouse over it, you can see that music cred replaces Music 104. You know, so if you want to go in, maybe you're picking up where a different faculty member left off because they're on sabbatical or something, and you're just trying to kind of see what all they've swapped, you can hover your mouse on that. If you also saw an amendment that now no longer works, or you don't want to do that, this is the spot where you could remove it, and I'll show you another way a little bit later, but while I'm here. So if we wanted to kind of, again, make some further course swaps, we would click that double arrow button, and then we're going to start typing a course, and we want to start typing in how it comes into CMU. So you don't necessarily need to know what it was called at the other institution. You want to know what it is here. So if we type in that music cred, we can see the ones that have already been used elsewhere, which is super helpful, so that we're not seeing a ton of options. So maybe I'm saying that actually this course right here, this is going to replace that. So I'm going to click add. I'm done. I don't want to add any other replacement courses, so I'm going to say that's good. I'm going to come over here. When the red triangle, well, it would normally be red, but when the triangle here, that means it's required. You are setting an expectation that that student has to take that class. If you are doing this thumbs up, you're saying, hey, I recommend this choice for you. This might be a spot if you are advising a student like a comm major and you have that laundry list of electives that you're saying, hey, given our conversation, I think you should focus on these. And then the other one is to disallow, and there's really specific reasons you would do that. That's really not going to be you. But then we commit. If you wanted to put a note in, this is a good spot to do it. And then you're going to commit that amendment. So again, you're going to see this workflow screen. This was something I was not able to show you on the declare and amend page, but this is kind of what it looks like. And so if we come back out here to this student's degree progress, and I just got a notification that I made that swap. But if we come back out here to her degree progress, this is again where you want to go and double check that everything kind of happened how I wanted it to happen. So if we look down here, there we can see that I have now added that course to this section. Okay. Let me take a look at my notes, see if there's anything else. If you're wondering how to see what their transfer credits were, under here on their transfer equivalency report, you can kind of see a little bit more of here was the course at Davenport. And so, all right, their ENGL 109 came in as English 101. Here's the grade they got in that course. Here's the number of credits it was there and what it came in for here. So again, when you're seeing a lot of departmental cred and you're just seeing music credit, well, what was that? What was that actual course? And so you can see that 158, MUS 158 at Mott is really Piano 1. So that kind of helps you when you're in that screen, seeing if, hold on, seeing if that's the one that you really want. If you realize like, oh, dang, I did not want to do that. I did something and that did not work how I wanted it to work. You have two different ways that you can kind of come in here and review that. So the first is you can come back to the course amendments as I showed before and hit that kind of undo or reverse button. And it'll ask you like, are you sure you want to undo this amendment? Yes, I'm sure. And then you can kind of confirm that. So that would be through this screen. There also is a course amendment history. So if you did want to take a look and see like, well, who made some of these amendments and things like that, you can see like Mary Beth made, you know, most of these, she did it on 10/6/2020 and kind of showing you, here's the requirements she is swapping. If you made the amendment, you could delete it from here. If you did not make the amendment, you cannot. Your only way to do that is in that actual section where you're editing. So if you wanted to undo someone else's amendment, that's where you would do it. Reasons why you might undo someone else's amendment are fairly rare. Sometimes we did the best amendment we could with the options at the time, and a student maybe takes some additional credit somewhere else or something like that. So you might undo it there. Or again, we goofed, we thought we knew, and we're kind of putting things in appropriately, but realizing, no, that's not really kind of the correct one. Something else you want to keep in mind is you are coming in to kind of make these amendments or make these swaps, especially if you're adding options, is to think about which one you are selecting. So here's what I mean by that. If we were to swap Music 311, which we would not normally do this, but if we wanted to swap it for English 101, there's a laundry list of choices here, right? So the system's going to kind of auto pull in any of those other number options or things like that. So if you want to find the one they've already taken, you want to look for the one that's got some more information on it. If they, if maybe she hadn't taken this course yet, trying to think of a good example, maybe, you know, BCA 525. Okay, so there's a lot of choices here, you know, and you want to make sure that you're getting the correct one. Probably the most common question I get from faculty after they've done an amendment and they're like, Sarah, it's not showing up. I don't understand why it's not showing up. Is either they did not pick the one that they were registered for or enrolled in, and so that's why it's not showing up, or they kind of picked the wrong option out of the list. That's a reason, for example, that I might come in and undo an amendment and fix it. But that's a really good example of kind of why we might come in and change that. And let me see, I'm sure I can find a class she's in to kind of demo that, of what that's going to look like to you. Let's see, in the test site. Okay, so she's in Music 155A. So let's come back to this one. So if we put in Music 155, you've got this one, you've got this one, this one, this one. Well, this is the one she's actually in. So that's the one that you would want to pick for your amendment. If they haven't started the class, if it's not even done yet, that's okay. You don't have to worry about it. But again, that is probably the most common question I get from faculty. I did the amendment, it's not showing up, and I can't figure out why. It's usually that. If you were coming in, let's say the student was on a BAA and you wanted to fix that overage issue, or you wanted to add a course, actually let me cancel this out, and you wanted to kind of add a course as required, you would just click this button and you would just start loading it up, right? You might start putting in, you know, your music cred, things like that. Again, avoiding the ones that are already used. And you're basically upping the number of required credits in that section. A pro tip, do it in the required section and not electives. Learned this one the hard way. It will shift other elective options out to accommodate the ones that you're saying, no, I absolutely want those ones in there. So if you are trying to kind of offset something like that, or you want to add, you know, something to their record, usually the required courses sections are some of the better places to be doing that. Any other questions? Kind of looking at my handout, make sure I didn't miss anything here. I think we got that. We've talked about how to kind of undo amendments, things like that. So if not, let me share just some kind of general FYIs about amendments. Your department might set expectations about what can and cannot be amended, or what courses can or cannot be swapped in. The university, specifically the registrars, has no such feelings about that. They really don't care, to be perfectly honest. If you are, again, an art faculty and you want to replace a course with a bio course, like, get it, girl. Like, they don't care. They just want to know what the student needs to be held for at the time of a graduation audit. So if you aren't putting in these amendments, or you just put a note that says, no, that's fine, I'll count this course for this course, that's not going to cut it. You have to go in and put the actual amendments in place to be able for the registrars to kind of know what to be holding for. So that's probably one of the other most common questions I get. Can I do this? Yes, you can. If you think it's an appropriate course to go in and be used, then do it. Again, your own department might set its standards, but generally, we just want to make sure that we know. Now, obviously, if you like replace the entire major with bio credits, they'd probably be like, hey, you okay? Everything going okay over there? But they're not going to ask questions. With that, a quick reminder, you can also not have one course do kind of double duty. So here's what I mean by that. If this student right here, this music theory and composition student, and actually I think I've got, let me use this one. So this student has their required courses 1. They have to get 23 credits in here. So if I'm using BCA 101 and they're required and as an elective, that's not going to work because then they're going to be 3 credits short. So sometimes I've seen faculty say like, okay, they don't need to take this class anymore. I don't want them to take that one. Well, they still need X number of credits. So that's a great option for a swap. Okay, I don't want you to take BCA 223. I'm going to swap it with this different requirement. And so that comes in a lot, maybe in theater or something, or courses where maybe the student just didn't hit that rotation appropriately. Disallowing or waiving, again, is something you're probably just not going to do very frequently. As CAM advisors, we have a list of amendments we're approved to make. Those have been approved by the department chair or faculty advisors in that area. So if you're noticing some stuff that you're seeing and you're like, it's really cool if you guys do this too, or if you want to make that approval, we can work with that and we'll add that to our list. And we're happy to do so because we just do these also to help make it a little bit clearer for the student and help take some of that kind of smaller administrative stuff off of your plate. If you do an amendment for a course that's a prereq, they might run into issues. So for example, if you are maybe adding a course in or swapping for like BCA 210, which could be a prereq, sometimes the system doesn't always pick that up, that requirement has been met. So they might be putting in an exception request for that. Obviously they can keep moving forward, but it's helpful to kind of prime them that, hey, you might run into some issues with registration. If you ever run into a tight spot, like CAM advisors are more than happy to help. We can kind of troubleshoot. I will sometimes get questions about what's the best way to put this in. You know, should I do it as a swap or an add or what makes the most sense? By all means, let's chat about it. You know, let's kind of look at that student's situation specifically. Again, if you want to know who their advisor is, then you can kind of click over here. So this student, again, was a switch, a test student, but let's say Brett was in there, then you want to go to Brett. If Megan Potts is in there, you want to go to Megan. I know a lot of folks have been working with Brett and I for a long time, and they just kind of send students our way. It really is best to kind of check and connect directly with their advisor. That advisor could be having email exchanges with that student, could, you know, probably knows their situation better. If it's just a general question about a how to, send it anyone's way. We can definitely field that. If you're ever doing something that is a bit like, that's really good to put a note in. It's always good to put notes in, but we will frequently hear students be like, well, Mike Marn told me I could do this. And I'm like, okay, did Mike Martin put that in writing? Like, we're not going to make amendments if we don't have it in writing or a confirmation from you, or a note in degree progress or something like that. But if you did do something a little off, or, it just seems like, hey, I want people to know why I did this or why this is in here, notes are always a great way to do that.
She's lying. I did not tell her she could do that.
I know, right? They always say, well, my faculty advisor told me, in the same way that I'm sure they're telling you, my CAM advisor told me I could do this. And probably not, right? So that's where the notes are super helpful in being like, well, I think this is what your faculty advisor was actually saying or recommending, and let's kind of put that in. But sometimes there are some that are just a little bit more advanced, very specialized. I'm thinking art. Clark, if you're still with us, students who, if they're graphic design, can take Art 363 and 360 or 341. And, like there's kind of a next level way we have to put that in. I did not include it here because it is fairly specialized, but we could definitely show you all how to do that. But if you ever run into kind of like, I am declaring on 2 different degrees, or, I am running into some problems here and I don't understand how this works, please feel free to reach out to us, and feel free to reach out to Sarah Potter, and her information's in that handout in kind of that general FYI and reminder section. Any questions about amendments? I have one last area I want to cover with you all, but definitely want to cover any questions that anyone might have.
I have a general question. I'm wondering if there's any discussion about having the option of when we hover over a course, like for example, Art 283, if it would actually tell us what the actual name of the course is. Sometimes it's difficult to remember, all the numbers in my head, and that would just be a very useful modification to the degree progress.
They are always accepting suggestions, and that's something we have definitely brought to the table. I think it's very powerful and meaningful when faculty also make recommendations or some of these suggestions. So if you are open to it, Clark, I would definitely, if you can pop that in an email, I can forward that to
Who do I send it to?
You can just send it to me and I'll forward it on and continue copied in. But they're always kind of taking those suggestions, and I think they're kind of trending towards that direction. But I agree, sometimes it's hard, and I end up with like 5 tabs open because I've got their bulletin and course search and registration and degree progress. And so I get it, kind of hovering over to see would be very valuable.
Okay, great. We'll do that.
Sarah, I have a question about the advisors page column. I found some information is lacking because I couldn't find the major advisor information. It is only the college academic advisor. The only way I can find who signed the major is go to the notes to see that. Is there any way the advisor page will be improved?
Thank you for bringing that up, Richard. I had meant to do that. So when we moved to the online declaration process, there was kind of a glitch in the system that it wasn't picking up who declared it and adding their name to that advisor tab. It was listed there previously because Vicki Steele and her team and registrars were actually putting it in by hand, so that was part of their process. So it is definitely a known issue. They have been working on this ticket for quite some time. This is also something where I feel if we can get some faculty behind that to kind of push it forward, it would help grow some momentum. But it's a disconnect between degree progress and SAP. But you're right, the only way at this moment in time to know who declared that program is either in the notes or in the under declare and amend, you can see their program history. So you could see kind of whatever previous majors or minors they had declared and things like that. But I totally agree. Having your faculty information in there is incredibly valuable. That's another one I'd be happy to pass along your feedback to the people that need it.
Yes, please. It's been a while. I think last time we raised the problem.
Yes, it's been a minute for sure. And I will say I know they're looking into it. I don't know kind of what the holdup is, but I'm happy to look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So one of the last things that I would like to show you is what if amendments. So sometimes you're working with a student, maybe they're a transfer student, and they are applying for a program, but they can't declare it right away. So I'm thinking something like graphic design, right? So you do a what if for them. So maybe, again, we're just going to use this. You do a what if for them, and you're like, well, I really want to show you how that transfer credit can be used, or what your requirements really are going to be when the time comes, or you're working with a prospective student or something like that. So you can make all the same amendments I just showed you in a what if format. So, and again, let me show you again. Down here under declare and amend, on the what if or transfer simulation amendments, it'll open up this screen right here. And it's going to ask you for the what if scenario identifier. So that's this number right here. So when you do a what if, again, that's often listed up through here. A student might have multiple, depending on what's there. And so with this what if, it's going to be, okay, here's the number. So if I'm putting in, 255, I'm going to go to that scenario. And now again, this is all in the what if capacity. So these are not official. But you can go in and start looking at that. Now, normally, if we weren't in test, I would have access to this stuff, and you would too. But you can go in and make those amendments, and that is incredibly valuable for students that are coming in and have a tremendous amount of transfer credit, or we're kind of moving things around. Sometimes our international students, and then you can kind of save that all the same as you did before. And you'll have a choice then when they actually do declare in that format, do I want to copy all of those amendments over? And so it's not like then you have to do double the work to then put them in again. You can just copy them over. And so I did that very recently with a student. The student is returning. She was an art major. She was here before all of the numbering changed. So I kind of put some stuff in order for her so she could see what she would have left to do. Well, then she did officially get declared with Brian, and then I just copied all of those amendments over. So that made it really easy to make that transition. But I cannot stress enough how valuable it is, particularly with incoming or students who are returning after a while, to make it very clear to them what you think their expectations are, and then to us. Because then if we're working together, it's super hard, like in areas like theater or whatnot, like, well, what do I need to take? I don't know, because there's so many choices and options. So if you have any of that insight, I recommend it. This also helps us not lose their transfer credit, so to speak. And so what I mean by that is, let's say advertising, Marketing 300. This is an issue that comes up a lot. The marketing department is not inclined to go in and make direct amendments for Marketing 300. So it's going to come in as cred a lot. So if we aren't kind of catching that early and showing that student, here's how we're going to use this credit, you don't need to take Marketing 300. If we aren't showing that, they end up taking classes they don't need and spending money they don't need to spend. So kind of using this is very helpful. Or again, if you are officially declaring, review that transfer cred, because some of those things are not necessarily populating automatically. So that's always incredibly helpful to be looking at that. And let me kind of show you one other quick thing. Because again, the system's really only going to pull in what it's coded and allowed to. So maybe departmental credit, you have an elective option where that's open, so it might show there. But there is something at the bottom of the screen called Other Auditing Info. And this is showing you courses that are not being used anywhere else. So again, you'll know the ones in your area. You know, if you're journalism, particularly advertising, you might be looking for marketing cred. Well, hey, what's that? You know, what's that over there? And if you do hover over this, you'll see what was the course, what was their grade, you know, that kind of thing. But you can also look at their transfer credit equivalency. Does that make sense? Do folks have any questions? That is kind of the end of my list, but I'm happy to field any questions folks may have.
Where is the what if code located? I couldn't find. I'm using one student, but
Yeah. Yep. So if you're in their what if tab, so like I'm looking at CamTest student number 3, we're right here in their Bachelor of Applied Arts, and right up here on the right hand side, there should be a what if ID number. If you're not seeing that, but you are seeing like the watermark behind it that says what if scenario, shoot me a screenshot, Richard, because you definitely should be seeing that.
okay, I see. This is the second. Yes, okay. Thank you. Got it.
Absolutely. And that's something to remember. You know, there's lots of tabs up here, and sometimes it defaults to maybe like a certificate they've declared or their other degree, you know, for some of those students who are doing 2 degrees. So always good to look up here and make sure you're on the tab you actually want to work from. What other questions do you have?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I missed how you get to the screen that you're on
Yes.
to see the what if. I just so where do you click on the left hand side?
Yep.
Menu.
So let me kind of walk you through from the main degree like the kind of quote unquote main degree progress page. Right. This is where you're going to land when you come to degree progress.
Right.
And it's going to load real slow. So, oh, of course it didn't do it right. So it's going to load to kind of whatever they're currently on or if they're undeclared. And so let's get that going right there. I will say, kind of pro tip wise, I will often open everything in new tabs so I can just move between with a student. But this is going to be like their homepage, Clark. So like if you are logging in for the first time with the student, it's going to come here. Up at this top section, you'll see a couple things. You'll see their name. This tab is their kind of primary tab. And then if they have any what if scenarios, that's going to show up right here. And they might have a couple, you know, so that's something to be aware of. But they're going to be all listed up here, and you kind of know because it has this little text box type thing looking next to it. And so again, I like to open that in a new tab, and that's going to take you back to that what if page.
Oh, okay. So I'm looking at a degree progress right now. It has that little tab on the right hand side with the little speak box like you're talking about. I click on it and nothing happens. So I don't know, maybe it's just I've got a bad connection. But that tab is for the what if.
Exactly.
Okay. Right.
And if you do run into continued problems with that, I do think that might be a technical issue because it definitely should be showing up there.
Yeah.
Sometimes the what ifs are nearly identical. You know, we did a what if and then they end up declaring. And Brett's going to kind of talk a little later today at the 2 o'clock session of how you can leverage these what ifs when it comes to things like MAP. So helping a student sequence some classes. But yeah, if nothing is showing up on that screen, it's a problem, and you'll definitely want to kind of either report it to the help desk or take a screenshot and send it to literally any one of us, and we can kind of forward it along for you and kind of keep you in the loop on how to do that. But screenshots are incredibly valuable. The person who works on this, his name is Jared. And so including like the student number, I usually just kind of grab a whole kind of this web address, the student number, whatever. Screenshots are super helpful. Any other questions as we wrap
Yes,
up?
the last question about the what if. I'm now on a student page. So what if it's just a simulation, right? Nothing can happen. Just to show them if this happened, if we switch this, and it will happen like that. This shows them the scenario, but it's just a simulation. Nothing will happen in the real world.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So the way you'll know kind of, again, they're official. So that first tab is usually kind of officially what's in the system. And you'll see like this student is officially undeclared. This is their governing bulletin. If you wanted to create a what if scenario with them, you would do it from here. This is, like you said, exactly just a hypothetical. Nothing here is official. If you do amendments here, they are not official. Again, you'll either have to copy them over when they officially declare or kind of redo them. But for exactly that scenario, Richard, that, okay, I think I want to do journalism now and maybe an ethics, values, and society minor. What would that look like? You know, how would those credits be applied? So for this student, you know, she's just starting broadcasting. So she was in business. So she doesn't really have any of these courses done, but sometimes they do. And here's how those courses are going to apply. So yes, you're absolutely right.
Thank you.
If you do have other questions after today, again, the handout is very helpful. It's on that faculty page. If you do need anything, just let us know. I'm gonna stop the recording right now. But yeah, if you need anything else, just let us know.
Thanks, Sarah.